hundreds of people across the world have one task.
Withdraw as much money as possible.
This synchronized strike is courtesy of
The Lazarus Group,
a network of hackers allegedly operating on behalf of a country which denies all involvement.
North Korea.
Join me, Jeff White,
And me, Jean Lee, for a gripping new series of the podcast.
The Lazarus Heist.
Listen first on BBC Sounds.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The evacuation of thousands of foreign nationals from Sudan continues as the 72-hour ceasefire appears to be holding. US officials claim the Taliban have killed the IS leader behind the Kabul airport bombing. And we have a special report from Ukraine, where Kyiv is ramping up the homegrown production of drones to meet the huge demand from the front line. And the British singer Ed Sheeran appears in a New York court to deny that one of his most popular songs copied Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Hello there, I'm Victoria Valentine. The UN has said a 72-hour ceasefire between the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group appears to be holding in some parts of the country. Thousands of foreign nationals are still trying to get out of the country, with numerous governments organising evacuations of their citizens. This is the first UK evacuation flight landing in Larnaca in Cyprus with 39 people on board. Another flight has landed in the last couple of hours or so. As thousands flee, residents in the capital Khartoum have spoken of their fears that the world is abandoning them, with supplies of food, medicine and water running low. Nearly all of the shops in the city have closed, and residents say prices of even the most basic goods have doubled. Well, we can speak now to our correspondent in Nairobi, Ferdinand Omondi. Now, the British Prime Minister has warned of a critical 24 hours of evacuation ahead as flights leave Sudan. A temporary, shaky truce does appear now to be holding. What do we know, if anything, of the movement of troops or fighting during the ceasefire? I think we may have lost her there. If we can, we will be going back to Jean and talking to her about that. So that story there, the meeting between Biden and the South Korean president, a pretty important one between the two nations. Now, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
For Dame Sharon White, as chair of the John Lewis Partnership, she's normally focused on profit. But at this blood donation centre in Stratford, the focus was on giving blood and the pressing need for more black donors.
I'm so happy. It's been a long time since I last gave blood, about 20 years ago. And I just feel really happy and very lucky.
Sickle cell anemia is the fastest growing genetic condition in the UK and far more prevalent in black people. Over the last 5 years, the numbers of blood donations needed to treat it has increased by 66%.
I'm here giving blood.
This is your first time, is it?
It is.
Lord Simon Woolley, the principal of Homerton College in Cambridge and founder of Operation Black Vote, was also donating, and the two hope that their example will lead to others doing the same. And black donors are particularly important because the ethnically matched blood provides the best treatment, and the blood of these two well-known donors will be ready to use within hours.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now, let's talk about what's going on in Singapore, because Singapore has executed a 46-year-old convicted drug trafficker. Tanggaraju Sapia was found guilty of trafficking a single kilogram of cannabis 5 years ago. Campaigners had been hoping that he would be given a reprieve at the last minute. Live now to Singapore, and our reporter Katie Silver, who's been following this story for us. Now, Singapore has some of the world's toughest anti-drug laws, the death penalty for drug trafficking itself and lesser penalties for couriers. Can you just remind us a little bit of the background to this case? Well, Ed Sheeran denies his song was a copy of the 1973 hit. The trial is expected to last a week. Stay with us for the business news.
Want to understand what the news means for you? BBC News Catch Up on Sounds is a new playlist that puts you in control and lets you explore the stories you're interested in. From breaking headlines
There's been a wave of missile strikes across Ukraine.
to deep dive podcasts and current analysis.
The longer the conflict goes on, the more chance there is just something happening that leads to an escalation.
Make sense of the stories you care about whenever suits you. Open the BBC Sounds app, tap podcasts for News Catch Up.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Is the worst over for big tech? Microsoft and Alphabet beat analyst expectations despite the downturn in the sector. We delve deep into Joe Biden's economic scorecard as the US president asks voters for one more time to finish the job. And how do we rid our oceans of plastic waste? I speak to a man who claims to have the solution. Hi there, it's time for our top business stories. I'm Victoria Valentine, and we begin with the financial results of two US tech giants, Google's parent company Alphabet and Microsoft. They both unveiled quarterly report cards that beat expectations by quite some margin. Our shares in Alphabet jumped a little more than 1.5% in after-hours trade as the company announced that its quarterly revenue rose more than $69 billion. That's 3% higher than the previous year. Microsoft's stock also got a bit of a boost in extended trading, a smidge up over 8.5%, with quarterly revenue beating quite significantly, and that was mainly driven by its growth in cloud computing and other related businesses. Well, joining me now is Jeremy Goldman, who's the Senior Director of Briefings at Insider Intelligence. Jeremy, it looks like there's some signs of resilience here. That legislation coming out very soon. Natalie Moll, Director General at the EFPIA, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
It's low tide on Walney Island and a good time to get a glimpse of this incredible colony. This is the only place you'll find grey seals in Cumbria. And conservationists are keeping a close eye on them.
At the moment there's quite a large group just out on the beach. They're just resting, so it's what we call hauled out. So they're hauled out on the beach, just having a relax and having a snooze, I think. So this site's really special and really great for the seals because there isn't much disturbance here. So all the beaches around this reserve aren't accessible to people, which means it's a safe haven and a peaceful spot for the seals and all the nesting birds that come here as well. We do really encourage people to come here to look at the seals. You can see them from the hide, you can see them at high tide playing in the sea, but they really need to make sure that they're sticking to the footpaths, not going onto the beaches, and please just leave your dogs at home because they do disturb the wildlife, and it's really important that this is a peaceful place for wildlife.
You're live with BBC News. Now, the Bank of England's top economist has said people in the UK need to accept that they are poorer Otherwise, prices will continue to rise. Hugh Pill told a podcast in the United States that there was a reluctance to accept that, yes, we are all worse off. He said that in response to higher bills and other cost risings, workers actually had to respond by asking for wage increases that were smaller, and businesses, of course, were still charging more. Let's speak now to Victoria Scholar, who's the head of investment at Interactive Investor. Victoria, food inflation in Britain is still running at 17%. There are families struggling to get by, and these comments are likely to pour salt onto open wounds. In your view, is he right?
And that's why our volunteers believe.
Hugo, thank you so much for your time and your innovation. Thank you. And do stay with us here on BBC News. Much more to come.
I think we can use a form of capitalism and continue to get its benefits while solving climate change.
We should remember that the globalization we had before brought more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
I don't wake up thinking, I'm here to change the world, but I wake up thinking maybe I can make the world a better place.
Women ourselves are finding our power. We always had a voice. We just weren't allowed to use it.
I think that's the strength of Georgia, and that's the resilience of Georgia, to be able to continue on its path towards Europe, towards NATO.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The evacuation of thousands of foreign nationals from Sudan continues as the 72-hour ceasefire appears to be holding. US officials claim the Taliban have killed the IS leader behind the Kabul airport bombing. Ukraine ramps up the homegrown production of drones to meet the huge demand from the front line. We have a special report. And the British singer Ed Sheeran appears in a New York court to deny that one of his most popular songs copied Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Hello there, I'm Victoria Valentine. We are going to start with Sudan. The UN has said that a 72-hour ceasefire between the two sides, the Sudanese army and a rival paramilitary group, does appear to be holding, at least in some parts of the country. Thousands of foreign nationals are still trying to get out of the country, with numerous governments organising evacuations of their citizens. Well, this is the first UK evacuation flight landing in Larnaca in Cyprus, with 39 people on board. Another flight has landed in the last couple of hours. As thousands flee, residents in the capital have spoken of their fears that the world is abandoning them, with supplies of food, water and medicine running low. Nearly all the shops in the city has closed, and residents say the price of even the most basic goods has doubled. Live now to Nairobi, and our correspondent Ferdinand Omondi. The situation in the capital certainly does seem to be still very desperate. Casey Silver, thank you. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Stories of success, stories of failure, stories of strength, stories of corruption, stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of optimism, resilience, achievement, triumph. Remarkable stories from different places around the world. Join us for a series of stunning award-winning documentaries. Why Stories on BBC News.
Welcome back. This is BBC News. You are live with us. We are going to go back to our top story and Sudan and that ceasefire that does appear to still be holding. As we've been hearing, the UK government has started evacuating its nationals from Sudan to Cyprus. And we can speak now to Nick Garnett, our correspondent, who is in Larnaca at the airport for us. Nick, I understand you've had a chance to speak to some of the 39 who were on that first plane. How are they? That seemed like a bit of an error. Other items going under the hammer included designer handbags, shoes, watches. The sale raised more than $1.2 million. Do stay with us here on BBC News. I can't promise you that, but I can promise you the business news. I'll see you soon.
Now on BBC News, your daily briefing on business and economics from the world's financial centres. From new broadcasting house in London, World Business Report.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Is the worst over for big tech? Microsoft and Alphabet beat analysts' expectations despite the downturn in the tech sector. We delve a little deeper into Joe Biden's economic scorecard as the US president asks voters for one more time to finish the job. And how do we rid our oceans of plastic waste? I speak to a man who claims to have the answer. Hi there, it's time for the top business stories. I'm Victoria Valentine, and we begin with the financial results of two US tech giants, the Google parent company Alphabet and Microsoft. They both unveiled quarterly report cards that beat expectations. Alphabet shares jumped a little more than 1.5% in after-hours trade as the company announced that its quarterly revenue rose by more than $69 billion. That's 3% higher than the previous year. Well, Microsoft stock, they also got a bit of a boost in extended trading, a smidge up over 8.5%, with quarterly revenue beating as well. And that was mainly driven by growth in its cloud computing businesses. Jeremy Goldman is the Senior Director of Briefings at Insider Intelligence, and I asked him if we can see some signs of resilience here. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Now showing on BBC Real.
I'm designed to generate responses to questions based on my understanding of natural language.
You've probably used it. You've definitely heard of it. ChatGPT has been hailed as a game changer. It can write songs.
Melissa's got a vision, a story she wants to tell.
Define quantum mechanics, as well as explaining how I could boost my intelligence. Impressive, right? Computers seem to be rapidly outsmarting their creators. But is that really true?
Basically what these algorithms are doing is getting a lot of information from the internet. So they're capable of, addressing all kind of situations, all kind of questions. They're not very good in adapting. They're not very good in learning something in some scenario, in some environment, and then generalize it to a different environment.
The truth is, it's our adaptability that keeps us one step ahead of AI.
Original global stories from the BBC.
You're live with BBC News. Now, the European Commission is due to publish its pharmaceutical strategy today. It's been reported that the EU is looking at a compulsory licensing system so that in the event of a public health emergency, something like the COVID pandemic, it would be able to take control of manufacturing drugs and vaccines. This would go against pharmaceutical groups as they look to protect their patents and could possibly damage relationships between governments and drug makers. Natalie Mole is the Director General at the EFPIA, the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. And I asked her, is the EU going to get this over the line? And that is it from me for the last hour or so. I will be back with your business news in about 45 minutes time. And just a reminder of our top story: a second evacuation flight rescuing UK nationals from Sudan has now landed in Cyprus. Do stay with us for more on that story. We will see you very shortly.